So that's a perfect segue to Conspiracy Corner, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. All right. So
That's awesome.
So you've seen the video out there, and Jimmy Dore even addressed it, of the cop, like all like obscured. You couldn't see his face or anything because he's wearing a mask like everybody else, all in black. He's like there's a guy, a tall white guy, all alone, like near the storefront, and he's got a hammer and he's smashing windows. And then he walks away, and people that were legitimately there for the protest are like, "Wait a minute, what did you just do? What are you doing?" So the whole idea is that they're doing some of the destruction behind the scenes themselves in order to, validate the use of excessive force, in order to validate using sweeping in and using rubber bullets and tear gas and all stuff. Look at the destruction they just did, So that's conspiracy number one. We can talk about that. Conspiracy number two is Susan Rice. Oh, she just keeps giving. She's wonderful. Claimed that Russians were behind the violence at the George Floyd protests. That the Russians are trying to break us apart, and they're all behind it.
Do you see that Putin came out and said America should let its protesters protest in peace?
He must have enjoyed that.
He must have enjoyed that, yeah. But speaking of the provocateurs and everything, I mean, another historic thing, 1933, the Reichstag, the German parliament, burned, and the Nazis blamed it on communists. But it was pretty clear that they set the fire themselves, because it was they could use that as an excuse to attack communists, and they can also get rid of democracy by burning the parliament. So,
right,
it was very.
And I absolutely wouldn't doubt at all if that was happening in some cities, that some of this stuff was kind of happening, or not necessarily the police, but also happening by third parties. There are people that are essentially anarchists, right, or have their own reason for wanting peaceful protest to devolve into.
Well, it's called. They have the term for it. It's called acceleration. So these white supremacists, right, they want to accelerate the race war, and so it's just like you'd use an accelerant. If you're going to burn down a building, right, you do these provocative actions to accelerate the clampdown and a reaction to the clampdown. So I think it is.
And you're right. It happens right on the left and on the right. Right. You have the anarchists and Antifa possibly or whatever, and you have right-wing Nazi crazies that want a race war essentially, right? And both of those, and then there are just freaking crazy people that in pandemonium are going to be like, I can set a fire, and that happens too, right? Yeah.
Right. But I do think it's more on the right than the left. But I mean, as far as historical examples of provocative, white flag operations, right, or provocative, like breaking windows, whatever, I think tends to be more on the right than the left. Maybe you can prove me wrong, but I think that's.
Yeah, I essentially believe that one case I brought up. It essentially seems right to me that is essentially a cop or somebody like that, or somebody in the military or something trying to escalate things.
Well, the thing is that the looting was not an issue to the cops; it was the protesting that was the issue, right? So, what's the real threat to the power structure? Is it the looters or is it the protesters? Protesters.
So that's a broad brush, right? I mean, at this point, it's happened in a lot of cities, right? And I think the response has been different in different cities.
Okay.
I accept that. I believe that. Yeah, I believe that what you're saying is definitely true. Probably true in some in some areas. Yeah, that's right.
I think that definitely exists, obviously, because every sort of person kind of exists in the world, and there are a lot of groups that are nefarious and they are definitely taking advantage. I definitely think that there are a lot of opportunistic people who they may be opportunistic in the sense that maybe they are just really fed up with being locked up right now, and they just want to be able to vent. And it is not normal for us. We are very social creatures, and it is not normal for us to be cooped up inside of a house. For a lot of people, they are not realizing the fact that a lot of people don't have a backyard to go into. You know, they have a small apartment that they have to live in. If you're looking at a lot of these cities, you know, that they keep getting trashed, think about the situation that they were in prior to COVID, and then think about the situation during COVID, and how for months now they were lucky if they got a $1,200 payment, okay,
right.
and then they're expected to survive. They're under constant stress because if they turn on the news or anyone around them, they are bombarded with a death counter, a death ticker, you know, counting down for them, or that when they go out, they have to wear a mask, and that they have to stay, you know, distant from each other. Again, we're social creatures. We're not meant to be excuse me. And one of the things that when we first look at people, we look at their eyes and at their mouth, you know, that those are things that we have inherited as a way to survive, right? There's survival mechanisms that we have inherited. And so I think that all of these things, it changes the psyche of people. So I think that you do have a certain sector of people that they're just really upset from being locked up, and they're just, it's that groupthink, you know, you see somebody else do it,
right.
which is why that whole conspiracy thing of the bricks being laid out, you know, in certain sections, or you know, just placed there, you know, mysteriously, like, where did these come from? And then it's this whole thing of, oh, maybe they were doing construction, or no, it was placed there by the provocateurs or by the cops or whoever. And I do believe that there are provocateurs out there because, like I said, I think that this is a narrative that is being spun, and we are being. There is no way that you're going to tell me that the media would, even if it is something that's super sensational, that the media would go and pick up on a story like this if it was actually to the benefit of the people. I'm sorry if that is because I am such a cynical person that I just
Right.
do not believe anything in the media. But
well, and there is just that profit motive, right? They, you know, to the country's detriment, pushed Trump because he was profitable, right? When the print media was on its last legs, right, and cable news could profit hugely from Trump. He sold views, right? And the same thing is an effect, can be an effect on this as well, right?
But more so, definitely that 100%. It's definitely profit motive, but I think there's also they are also driven by what their donors, their advertisers, like all of you got to think about what's going on in the background. Always, whenever the media is focusing on one thing, you always have to look at what's going on, that sleight of hand, right? And what's going on economically right now, the fact that they're not talking about, okay, so do you think there's going to be any sort of repercussions where now we're not going to get another stimulus, right? That's what it's looking like. The fact that people are going to start getting evicted, they're going to, because the mortgage it's forbearance and is not working out for a lot of people, and the fact that we don't have any sort of debt cancellation going on, the unemployment thing, that's only going to go until the end of July.
Right.
Again, when people really start going hungry, and there's already food lines, this is already all of these things is disrupting our food supply. It's already been disrupting it because of the fact that now, you know, they've closed down a lot of these food manufacturers, and now they're saying that there's problems with the farms, so that you're not going to be able to have as many people harvesting these things. And the fact that you have like Amazon telling their trucks to turn around and that they can't deliver things. Once the food supply chain, once that gets broken, that is when we really start to see a lot of problems, which is why I'm saying that there is this justification to bring in the military, to bring in that infrastructure, so that once so that it's not such a blow to the population when we have to start rationing out food, or when we have to start rationing out things. People are not thinking about the long-term repercussions of what they're doing to our banking system, with this, you know, this transfer of wealth to upward transfer of wealth. the fact that, you know, so many people are going to be left without a job. And again, they are not doing a universal basic income. They are not trying to take care of the basic needs of the people. And
right.
I just think that this is all being set up so that way they already have the military infrastructure, and then people will not, little by little, we're having these things taken away from us, and people are not saying a peep. And then the people that do say something, it's something that's politicized again. It always has to be taken to that step, because that way you don't actually talk about the real issues.
Do any politicians know this is going on and are doing anything to address it, like in Congress or
is Congress in session?
I do have some stuff that I can talk about.
Okay.
Congress isn't even in session, right?
No, yeah, they came back this week.
Oh, they did. That's right. Okay. Oh, that's right. They wanted to pass the Patriot Act and FISA and stuff, but that actually did not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was realizing from what you were talking about that early, like I think like a couple of months ago, I would see like regular reports about like these horrific long food lines, but I didn't think I'd seen anything on that for a while. You know,
it's
basically, yeah, it's no longer important news to record. I guess.
I do see lines. I do see lines at Wendy's and McDonald's, which makes me wonder. You know, literally, what are they feeding these people? You know.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. Well, because remember how we talked about how the food prices were going to go up, and because obviously the premium always goes to the customer. We always have to end up paying for these things, right? And if they're able to get less things in stock, you know, if their food trucks can't deliver whatever it is needed in these stores, then what do you think is going to happen? The price of things are going to go up, right?
Right. Well, the quality is going down as well. I mean, now you're going to have, you know, you're going to have artificial meat, and you're going to have like, you know, you have all this GMO shit, like, you know, that causes who knows how many problems it causes. You know, GMO flour and soy and all this stuff that people, you know, that are, when they get their fast food, they're eating this stuff. And
well, I mean, first of all, everything that we eat, even if you grow it in your garden, is still genetically modified, because these fruits and vegetables, they've been genetically modified in order to be more appealing to us.
Well, they've been what's the term? I mean, they're like hybrids, and there's going back to like, you know, 200 years, they were developing strains of plants, right? I mean, that's not GMO in the sense of going into the DNA and actually changing.
But it is, because it's genetically modified. That's the
okay. Well, that's sad.
Right, but that's why you have to be specific in what you're talking about when you're talking about GMOs, right? Or when you're just talking about when people really have a problem with, like, I guess what would be organic or non-organic, right? And that's really the issue, because when it's non-organic, you're using all of these pesticides and all this kind of stuff that those chemicals, we don't know how it's going to react in our bodies. So that is the whole thing, that a lot of these fertilizers, or like, for instance, you know, obviously because I'm doing my garden stuff, I have looked into this, how, you know, if you use some of these manures as compost, some of the issues is that it comes from these animals that have been fed all these antibiotics and all of these things. Like, so if you're really trying to be organic or whatever, you're not really being organic, because you're getting all of these chemicals down the line from all these animals. So anyways, all right. So sorry, legislative.
Yours.